name is Brian. I'm the owner at BKW Bookkeeping. I help businesses in Northeast Indiana with their QuickBooks and bookkeeping. In this video, I'm going to show you how to create a rule within QuickBooks. So you can get to it by going to Transactions and then Rules. So rules are going to be helpful to save time, just like it says here, by basically automatically categorizing transactions that come in. So the example that I'll kind of run through here is when your insurance transaction comes in. So when you pay for insurance, that's going to be one that's always going to go to insurance expense. It's never going to go to any other category. So by setting up a rule, you're going to be able to tell QuickBooks to automatically categorize that transaction when it comes in, so you don't have to do it manually. Now, I will say you want to use them sparingly. You want to use it only when you can really drill down the specific transaction, because if you set up a rule that's too broad, you can potentially run the risk of categorizing transactions automatically that you don't want to be categorized. And because QuickBooks does it automatically, there's no way for you to easily review that transaction when it comes in. The only way you'd be able to discover it is, if you were reviewing your financial statements or you were to go into that specific expense and see it there. So just kind of a warning, really you want to be using this for transactions that you can really drill down, or use criteria that's specific enough that it's not going to be applying it to transactions you don't want it to be. So the example that I'm going to run through here is for insurance expense. So this is just the name of the rule. Here I'm going to select whether it applies to money in or out transactions and which bank account it applies to. And then here, this is where you actually create the rule. So in this case, I'm just going to say the description contains insurance. This is again an example where maybe I get a expense that comes through my bank and insurance is in the description, but for whatever reason, maybe it was a transaction that I wanted to categorize somewhere else. This is going to automatically categorize that transaction, any transaction that has insurance within the description. So in this case, it's pretty safe to say that it should be going to insurance expense. But again, just want to be mindful of that. So once you set up your conditions, and actually one other thing I'll mention is, let's say you have multiple conditions. This any or all selection basically acts as whether or not, if you have all selected, the rule will need to apply, each condition will need to apply. But if you have any, it could just be either of the conditions that you set. So you can think of it as all being and any being or. So with all, this condition and this condition would need to be met for the rule to be applied, whereas any, it would be this condition or this condition, and the rule would be applied. So with just one condition, it doesn't matter what this is selected as, but then we can go down here to say, how do we want QuickBooks to automatically categorize it? So it's going to be an expense. In this case, it's going to be insurance. And then I can select the payee or the customer as well if I need to. But another thing I want to show here is this test rule. So this is going to tell you whether or not this rule would apply to any transactions that are currently unreviewed. So I know here I have an insurance transaction that's come in that has not been reviewed yet. And here I can see that it would be applied to that transaction. So that's kind of a good way to see whether or not you have it set up correctly. If you know you have an uncategorized transaction that you would want this rule to apply to, you should see it come up here. And then finally, this auto add feature will basically determine whether or not you want QuickBooks to automatically categorize the transaction and save you the time in doing that. So in this case, I would leave that on, and then you would just need to click Save to actually create the rule. So that's kind of the basics of how you would create a rule in QuickBooks. Let me know if you have any questions, and thank you for watching.